Well, hey everybody, it's Mrs. Perryman. Hope you're doing well. So today we're going to be talking about grains and legumes. And so let me go ahead and share my screen with you. There we go. There it is. Okay, grains, legumes and grains. Look at all the pretty colors. So there's popcorn and almonds, and these are walnuts. These are soybeans here, red kidney beans. There's wheat, split peas, rice. There's all kinds of stuff that we're going to be talking about. Such beautiful colors and lots of different textures and uses. And so let's get to it. All right, so this is a really good vocabulary word for you, the word legume. And it's kind of a funny word, legume. Okay, and it's the seed from a pod producing plant. So if you guys have ever seen these things growing, if you ever had a garden before, you may have seen green beans growing, or you may have seen peas or things like that growing. And oftentimes, whenever you pop that pod open, there are beans inside. I have some. I've grown what we call cow peas or black-eyed peas before in my garden, and they're really fun to grow and really easy to grow. But within this legumes category, you'll see beans like kidney beans and pinto beans, and you'll also see peas like split pea. There's also lentils, which we'll talk about, that cook really quickly and easily. And then also in this category, which you might not think of, are things like nuts, like almonds and walnuts, and then things like seeds, like sesame seeds and poppy seeds. So all of those things fall into this legume category as well. So one thing to consider is that food, legumes in this category are a great source of complex carbohydrates, which means they take a while for your body to burn them, and also a really good source of fiber, which is excellent for our digestive system. Okay, and salads would be a good way to use beans. You may have seen them on a salad bar. You may have seen them like a 3-bean salad or maybe garbanzo beans. That you may also see just the bean, like it may be in the case of chili or just a pot of beans. Some other things though in this legume category will also be things like rice. Okay, and rice oftentimes you'll see used maybe as a dessert, like rice pudding, for instance. So we'll talk about all of those. Okay, so whenever you buy these things, you need to make sure that the packaging is as it should be. It shouldn't be open or look like something's been gnawing on it. Canned food should be dent free, because we know that dents in the can indicate that oxygen has gotten inside, which would cause food spoilage, specifically botulism, which is some pretty wicked stuff. All right, beans and peas, I'm sure you're familiar with this. You can buy them fresh. Okay, things like, for instance, black-eyed peas. Certain times of year, you can buy those in the produce section fresh. You can buy them canned, just a good old can of beans. You can buy them dried, so a bag of beans that are dried, you know that usually you soak for a while and then cook. You can also find them frozen a lot of times. So they come in a lot of different market forms. Okay. One thing, if you buy the dried version, you want to make sure that you're storing them in a cool, dry place. Most beans, before you cook them, you want to sort them. You want to make sure that they're in pristine condition. You don't want them to be dark or shriveled in some way. Okay, that you can keep them a long time. They'll stay fresh a really long time. They do eventually start to kind of lose some of their nutritive value and just dry out too much. But up to 2 years, which is a really long shelf life. Okay, so beans here, again, those are an edible seed. So if you think about how they grow usually in a pod that's up in a plant. Okay, oftentimes beans are going to be kidney shaped. Okay, and they're in that legume family that we've been talking about. Okay, beans, some version of beans is in just about every type of cuisine. Okay, so let's try to think of a particular type of cuisine and then try to identify some type of bean that is within that cuisine. I bet you can come up with some. Okay, and beans, we know that they have been good for us for a really long time. They've been on our diet for centuries. Another thing about beans is that some version of it will grow in just about every climate. And again, beans, peas, and lentils are all kind of in this category. Again, we want those nice bright colors and smooth. A cup of dried beans, when cooked, will be about 2 or 3 cups of cooked beans. So that's a good way to kind of gauge how much you're making. A lot of times you'll see like a 1 pound bag of beans, and that's about 2 cups. And so you're talking about maybe 6 to 8 cups of cooked beans once those are cooked. Okay, so here's a little bit of information on different kinds of beans. These are black-eyed peas. You also see them, if you're going to grow them, they're called cowpeas. Okay, that's a good picture of them. And this, I've always kind of thought it was kind of black, but it really is just kind of a dark purple. And you don't soak all beans. So for instance, black-eyed peas, you don't have to soak those. But lima beans, black beans, great northern beans, those you all soak. And then here is the cooking time. So honestly, they cook pretty fast, unless you're cooking them in a crock pot, in which case it would take a while. But if you're cooking them stovetop, relatively fast, especially if you've given them a good soak. All right, chickpeas, those are also known as garbanzo beans. And you'll see this a lot on a salad bar. You'll see people that add this to their salad. You will also see hummus. Hummus has become quite popular in the last few years. And so you'll see hummus quite a bit on a menu. All right, let's see here. Soaking and cooking time. So some of the beans have a harder shell, and so it will require longer soaking. Okay, and again, like we talked about with the black-eyed peas, those don't have to be soaked at all. You can just go right to the cooking process. Okay, split peas and lentils. So these are smaller, and you don't really you don't have to soak these. Now sometimes you will give these a jump and maybe pour like boiling water over them and let them sit for just a little bit and then cook them. But either way, they're going to cook pretty fast. Okay, here's your lentils and split peas, and these are quite tasty. They really kind of like lentils in particular will kind of start to break down and become starchy as opposed to staying like a bean would in a complete pod. So some of them are a little creamier. Okay, nuts, like I said, are in this category. And a nut, the definition of a nut is it's a fruit that has a hard shell and a seed, which is generally edible, and the shell is not edible. Okay, and in particular, we're going to talk about almonds. Okay, but almonds are fantastic. They can be slivered or ground into flour, sliced. Do all kinds of stuff with almonds. Okay, and also walnuts, hazelnuts, peanuts. Actually, those are more like a legume than a tree nut. Okay, there's seeds. Okay, poppy seeds. Who didn't like a poppy seed muffin? Okay, so seeds are kind of in that same legume category. Okay, and these are kind of a purpley blue color, and they'll have sweet and savory applications. You may see it in a salad dressing or on a poppy seed bun. Okay, and lots of different kinds of grain that we're going to talk about also. Grains as in whole grains like wheat, or maybe oats, and then those and corn, and all of those whole grains can be ground down into meal, like meal flour, like a cornmeal rather, or flour like wheat flour, and they have an integral part of just about everything that we are cooking. Okay. Stone ground, I think that's one of your vocab words this week. Grains that are broken down, ground and broken down, those are referred to as stone ground. Okay, rices and grains are one of the most consumed food products on the planet. And again, like we were talking about with beans, almost every culture in the world has some version of rice in which they consume. Okay, for the most part, it is fairly inexpensive, and so it is a good way to get some readily available carbohydrates, and again, not very expensive. Okay. As we talked about earlier, there's lots of fiber and good carbohydrates. It also helps in cholesterol, and again with the fiber in our digestive system. So a really good thing to do for your body. Okay. There's lots of different kinds of grain things, like spelt, for instance. That probably aren't as common as something you might hear like oats or maybe rice, but nonetheless have a place. And so it's interesting to look at all the different types of grains. Most of them are cooked similarly to rice, and used in a lot of the same way. Okay, here's some ancient grains right here. Amaranth, which that's, I think this is actually millet though. Barley, which I use barley in soup. Millet here is actually little tiny pellets, and you can cook it up. Kind of looks like couscous to me, or quinoa. Okay, quinoa is actually what we call a super grain, and it has a great deal of protein on its own. I think I read that it was even a complete protein on its own, and so that is very good. All right, here's a picture of an actual grain. Okay, this is the bran on the outside. You probably have heard of wheat bran, and this is the endosperm, and this is germ, and you probably have heard of wheat germ before. Okay, and so whenever grains are milled to make flour, for instance, the germ, which is this part here, and the bran, which is this part here, and the hull are removed, which is the out part here. Okay, and the hull is the protective coating. Okay, so and they're sold separately. So this right here is what we're making the flour out of. Okay, so bran, which is this outside part, is a great source of fiber. Okay, and so you'll see like bran flakes and those types of things that we add to our diet that are supposed to be good for our digestive system. That's where that comes from. Raisin bran, all of that. Okay, the endosperm, that is the largest part of the kernel. And again, that major source of protein and carbohydrate, and the germ here is the smallest. All right, so different kinds of grains and meals and flours that we come up with. Obviously, we have wheat, which a great percentage of our flour comes from, but there's also rice in full grain form, but you can also buy rice flour. Corn, you can buy whole corn, dried corn, or cornmeal. And the same deal with oats, and lots of these other types of grains will come in a whole grain, and they will be also ground into different kinds of either meal or flour. These are durum and semolina are different types of wheat, and you can buy the wheat berries, I think they're called wheat berries. I usually buy like hard winter wheat or red wheat to grind up to make homemade flours. And so I just keep a big bag of that in my freezer. But in these right here, jasmine, that is a version or a kind of rice, which would be the whole grain, and then rice flour, which you might see somebody might dust like chicken with it and fry it. It gives a nice texture. Sometimes people will thicken things with rice flour if they're trying to avoid the gluten, that protein that we find in wheat. So those are different kinds of grains that you can buy as a whole grain or ground them either into meal or flour. Okay, so rice is a staple in many cultures. We think of Asian cultures, India, a lot of countries that rice is the base for many meals. Okay, it can be the base for casseroles too. I mean, my gosh, it does lots of things. You could use it instead of pasta or instead of potatoes. So it's really multi-purpose. Okay, there are 3 different types of rice. There's long grain, medium grain, and short grain. And there's a couple of different ways that we cook rice. One is just the absorption method, where we're putting the rice into the water, and then we have the tight fitting lid, and the rice absorbs the liquid. There's also steaming it, and if you have a rice steamer, that is fantastic, but you can also soak your rice and then put it in a steamer basket over some boiling water where the steam actually cooks it, and that's another way to cook your rice. One of the things that you will need, though, is a sturdy pot with a tight fitting lid so that your liquid does not evaporate. If you add salt to it, it sure does add a nice, it wakes up the flavor. And it doesn't always have to be water that you cook rice with. You could cook it with chicken broth, for instance, or part chicken broth, or some of maybe use some water and some maybe cooking wine, or I don't know, maybe a juice of some kind to add some other flavor to the rice. A big thing to remember, if you take the lid off, you've just let all that steam out that you want to keep in that pot. So don't peek. Okay, once you're through cooking it, you need to let it rest for just a minute and then use a fork to fluff it up before you serve it. Those are some good rice cooking tips. Okay, here are a few names of a few rice that you may have heard of before. Arborio rice is a specific kind of rice. It's Italian rice. And the grain of these kind of rice, it almost looks, it's kind of short and not really round, but oval. And it's real shiny and white. And this is risotto is cooked differently than rice like you would cook in a covered pot. This type of rice you stir and it's cooked uncovered and you keep adding liquid to it, and that stirring releases the starch in the rice and it makes it really creamy, and so it has a different texture than the individual rice of a traditional rice dish. I guess this is just a creamy type dish, but anyway, a lot of times you'll see it with mushrooms or cheese or something like that added in it. It's quite delicious. Basmati rice, oh, so nice. Okay, there's brown rice. Okay, and look at the cooking time. Like for instance, basmati is 15 to 20 minutes, whereas brown rice is 45 to 50 minutes. So basmati is a fairly short grain, and brown rice is a longer grain. There's jasmine rice from Thailand, and it smells so pretty whenever it is. Jasmine rice and basmati both smell so pretty whenever they are cooking. Smell kind of florally. Anyway, really nice rice. And then wild rice is a lot of times you'll see it with maybe like a dark, maybe black or purple or dark brown, and it has a different texture and flavor than regular rice. It's almost kind of grassy. I guess that's what it is. All right, here's pilaf, rice pilaf, and that is the process. We'll brown that rice in either oil or butter or both before we start that cooking process, and that kind of imparts a toasted kind of a flavor, which is pretty delicious. Okay, and here's that risotto that we were talking about. Creamy Italian rice. There it is. It's the cooking process here. You just keep stirring in, and it's really starchy and creamy and delicious. Popcorn kind of falls in that category too. So have you guys ever tried to pop popcorn in a pot on top of the stove? It's kind of a fun way to prepare it as opposed to the microwave Otis, what's that called? Otis bags of popcorn that you get that you just throw in the microwave. This is kind of the old timey way to do it, but it's kind of fun. I've also used a brown paper bag, and you put 1/3 of a cup of popcorn and fold that over, and you can pop that in the microwave that way. And it's a pretty tasty snack. And popcorn comes in a couple of different colors. You'll see it in yellow or white. And it's kind of a fun treat. Everybody likes popcorn. On your grains, you want to make sure that you're storing those properly. My whole grains I keep in the freezer. They will spoil faster and begin to taste rancid faster than a ground grain. And so you want to be sure that you're using those up and rotating those out as quickly as possible. All right, so on Moodle this time, you will have a section on there on legumes and grains. And so you'll use the PowerPoint to help you answer the questions. There's vocab, like I said, and a few questions. And anyway, if you need help, give me a call or we can talk in class. So I hope you're having a great day, and we will see you soon.